Good evening and welcome to the Granada Forum. We are an education forum dedicated to First Amendment rights. This evening we present a very special health program. We'll be looking at the seldom acknowledged and rarely discussed issues surrounding the growing debate over the routine circumcision of both baby boys and girls. We will be showing one, possibly two videos as time allows. The award-winning documentary, Whose Body, Whose Rights, explores the medical history and ethics of circumcision, the physical effects of this operation, changing religious attitudes toward this practice, constitutional and legal issues, functions of the natural uncircumcised male anatomy, circumcision reversal, men's awareness of the issues, and children's rights. The second video focuses on female circumcision and begs the question, is it truly genital mutilation, cruel, harmful, and sometimes deadly? Done for the purpose of curbing sexual desire and occurring widely in North African countries such as Egypt and Sudan. Following the screening, there will be a discussion period with renowned pediatrician Dr. Paul Fleiss. Dennis, are we ready to go? Okay. Thank you. This is a video with a lot of emotional impact, isn't it? When I first saw this video and saw that circumcision, I sat on the edge of my bed and cried. And this is a lady who is a certified nursing assistant and certified clinical assistant. Thank God I didn't circumcise my 3 boys after seeing that. You know what Dr. Dean Adele said about women taking up the banner even before most men do? I came to this program, and actually I polled several people on our steering committee, all men, and they were appalled at the idea of bringing in this program, and I had to fight for it. Now, one of those men said his daughter's having a baby boy. And guess what he's going to do? He's going to get this video and show it to her. I feel uniquely qualified to chair tonight for a number of reasons. First, because I have Hellenic, Greek ancestry and Jewish ancestry both on my father's side. Secondly, because I'm a nurse, but mostly because I'm a mother. And watching that, it is an absolute violation of the mother-child bond. That's the way I strongly feel about it. In terms of the medical, having had some medical training myself, the very first thing I learned was about the law. And after viewing that circumcision, I don't think it can be called anything less than assault and battery and genital mutilation. As a Christian woman, because we've seen the Jewish perspective on this, I'd like to present a Christian perspective on this. I think it goes to the heart of thou shalt not kill, and the same purview is thou shalt not commit mutilation. Also, as Christians, we believe that the human body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. We belong to the Lord. We belong to the Lord. And to desecrate this temple, I believe personally, is wrong. People have different opinions on this, but that's my personal opinion. Now, at this time, I'd like to present not one, but 2 speakers. We thought we were only going to have one, but as it turns out, we have 2. At this time, it is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Paul Fleiss, a well-known pediatrician who maintains a 30-year private practice in the Los Angeles area. Dr. Fleiss has worked in an advisory capacity for the La Leche League and the National Organization of Circumcision Information Resource Center. His writings on children's health care have been published in medical journals both nationally and internationally. He is also the father of 6 children. What better practical experience? Now, would you please join me in giving a nice warm welcome for Dr. Paul Fleiss. Joining him and sharing the platform will be Mr. Stephen Michaud. He has been active since 1990 in the growing international movement to end all unnecessary genital mutilation practices. He has appeared on television, radio, and newspapers and before college forums, addressing the topics of circumcision and its effects and the possibilities for its reversal. Now please join me in welcoming these wonderful gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to come before you to speak on a subject that I feel very strongly about. I'm a pediatrician, and I've been one for a long time, and I can say that as a young intern, the chief resident at the hospital where I trained at said that there were 3 circumcisions to do that day, and that he would do the first one, and then I would do the next 2. And that was my training. I watched him do 1, and then I proceeded to be an expert at circumcising. And of course, I knew nothing about what I was cutting off, and I will say that physicians or whoever's doing circumcision today, I would say that almost to a person, they do not know what they are cutting off. The foreskin has a function. It is a piece of living tissue that in the newborn, it has the function of keeping the end of the penis warm and clean and moist. It contains, it's not just a piece of skin that is sometimes described as being extra or redundant. It's the size of, when they take it off of a newborn boy, it's the size of a thumbnail. And like it was so well stated in the video you just saw, that represents the skin of about the size of an index card in the adult male. Indeed, that skin that looks like it's extra or redundant in a newborn ends up being skin that covers the shaft of the adult erect penis. It's about a third of the way down the shaft. And these studies have been proven that we are mutilating our men. And it took me a long time to realize that I had been mutilated and that my sexual function has changed because of being circumcised. The foreskin contains most of the nerve endings that go to the penis. Of course, it's quite possible that you enjoy sex without a foreskin. And indeed, like it was said, I have 6 children. I've enjoyed sex from the time I was very young. Well, I still enjoy sex, and it's quite possible you don't have to have a foreskin to enjoy sex. Just like women that have been mutilated, that have their clitoris removed. Well, once I met one woman, and the first question that was asked of her, she did not have a clitoris, she had it removed. And the first question that was asked of her was, do you enjoy sex? And she had had children, and her answer was, of course I enjoy sex. And she did not have a clitoris. Well, you don't have to have a clitoris to enjoy sex. You don't have to have a foreskin to enjoy sex. So that's a question that doesn't really matter. It is a question that we are doing something to babies, that we're mutilating them. Now, the interesting thing about mutilation is that the problems with circumcision go grossly underreported. There are all degrees of circumcision. There's a lot of different ways to perform a circumcision. The one you saw in the video was done with a Gomco clamp, but there's doctors that do a Mogan clamp. There's doctors that do Plastabells. There's Moyles that use a knife. Through history, there's been various devices that have made circumcision quite easy to perform. You can get quite skilled at doing them so that the whole procedure can take just 3 or 4 minutes. But as of course you heard the agonizing cry in the video, and sort of I can tell you that I have done hundreds of circumcisions. And I used to do them because people would say they wanted their babies circumcised. And the baby would be strapped down on that board that you saw in the video. And that board was my circumcision board that you saw in the video. And babies would be strapped down to the video, and I would focus on doing the procedure. And I did not hear that agonizing cry of pain. Babies feel pain. And it is an agonizing pain. It's much different than a pain that you hear when a baby gets a shot, or when baby is hungry, or when baby wants to be picked up and held. You know, babies are a very special thing. Babies are they are very unique. Babies are born with a brain. They hear, they see, they feel. And one of the first things we do, sometimes I've seen babies being circumcised almost the very minute they're delivered. The baby's first born, and he comes into the world with this brain that's just so vulnerable. And the first thing we do is we assault it with this cutting off part of his body without an anesthetic. It is a mutilation, a barbaric procedure. Remember that this procedure started among primitive people. It started among primitive people that thought that the clitoris represented maleness and the foreskin represented femaleness. And in order to be a person, you had to have it removed. And then through the ages, like my friend Frederick Hodges described, there was all kinds of rationalizations for doing this procedure. This procedure was done for things that people said it cured epilepsy, it cured asthma, it cured migraine, it cured every disease that man has, arthritis and diabetes, and they would find every rationalization in the world to do this procedure. But of course, it remained a rationalization for a primitive practice that has been carried on through superstition. And it is time that if you know anybody that's expecting a baby, I hope that everybody can carry a message that you don't have to have it done. If it's necessary to be done, wait until the boy can consent to have it done himself, that he says that I want this done. Boys don't decide that. I've known many, many boys that are intact. They go through their lives. Some are Jewish, some are not Jewish. They can go through their lives with a foreskin and just be just fine. I've known Jewish boys that were bar mitzvahed just fine. They're not excluded from their communities. I've known boys that are intact when their fathers are circumcised. They do just fine. They don't have to look just like their father. It is, one thing I started to say that I wanted to complete the thought of was that the complications go grossly underreported. And this is just a really awful thing. But there are complications such as infection, and I've seen babies when the circumcision, you're cutting off a piece of tissue and you're leaving an open wound that is, if it's not, well, even if it's taken care of properly, it makes a place where bacteria can enter the body and the boys can get infected. I've seen babies hemorrhage after circumcision, and I was told about one just tonight of a boy being baby boy hemorrhaging following a circumcision. And sometimes it can be so severe, that hemorrhage, they can lose a great deal of blood that they need a blood transfusion, with all the additional risks that adds to. And then, of course, some boys, you can see some boys that have so much foreskin removed. You know, the procedure is just supposed to take off just the very tip. Some boys have so much removed. You can see their penis, a little boy, and you can see he has a non-erect penis, a flaccid penis, and there isn't a bit of extra skin there. There's no skin to go back and forth loosely over his penis like he's supposed to have. And I know that there are some men in here that are circumcised and some have lots of loose skin that they didn't take off very much. And then there's others of you that don't have any loose skin that's supposed to slide back and forth over your penis. The penis is supposed to have loose skin that slides back and forth. It's part of the way it's supposed to function. That is where the nerve impulses that provide the pleasure come from. When you're circumcised, you don't have the lubricating glands, you don't have the nerve endings, you don't have the hormones. I don't know if any people, any of you understand what pheromones are. Those are removed when you circumcise. And I can tell you that people that are doing circumcisions today do not understand what they are cutting off. And it can be the professor of urology at the biggest university. He does not understand what he is cutting off. And it can be you can challenge them. They do not understand what's in the foreskin. Well, before I take up all the time, Stephen, why don't you Stephen, say something.
I'll try to keep my comments as brief as possible because I'm sure there are going to be more than a few questions and comments here tonight. And I know Paul and I would like to give you as much time as possible to have your say. I am the current coordinator of the Southern California chapter of the National Organization of Restoring Men. We go by the acronym NORM. NORM was founded in 1989 by two men in San Francisco. And they came together, they knew each other personally. They came together because they both had concerns related to their childhood circumcisions. And being very intelligent and very learned, they had both tried to get as much information as possible about what had been done to them. And they were shocked to find that whether you were looking in libraries, or whether you were looking in bookstores, or whether you were talking to most doctors about the most common surgical procedure in the United States since World War II, you could not get full and accurate and objective information on what is done. And they felt that was wrong. They felt that didn't make sense. And they had some people in their lives, friends, relatives, business associates, who said to them, don't question. It's done. It's over. Get on with your life. Don't question. They came together, looked at each other in an apartment one night in San Francisco, and said, we're not going to take that. It's our bodies. It's our rights. If those responsible for our care and well-being when we're children will not share the information with us, we will find it, we will get it, we will provide a forum for men to come together and speak honestly and openly about whatever circumcision issues concern them. And that's how NORM started, with two men in San Francisco. Today, NORM has 21 chapters in the United States and has chapters in 5 foreign countries. Additionally, there is networking in the United States in another 25 states. And the growth of NORM, as well as the growth of the larger movement to end all genital mutilation around the world, wherever it occurs, to whomever it occurs, shows no signs of stopping. And that's not surprising when you think about it, because when you create millions of victims, male and female, you're going to have armies of people who have honest questions, honest concerns, and above all, very real personal emotions. I've been involved in the movement to end genital mutilation male and female, in the U.S. and abroad since 1990. I got involved with NORM and the restoration movement for men in this country in 1992. I was not prepared personally for the stories of the men who I have met through the movement, and especially the last 2 years when I've been coordinating the local chapter. It has never ceased to amaze me, it's never ceased to touch me, how many different stories I hear from men. And one question that I ask almost every man I meet who's willing to share his story at a meeting, or who's willing to talk to me on the phone seeking assistance and counsel, is who else in your life knows this? And with very few exceptions, no one else knows. So when I appear in public, or I'm on a talk radio show, or I'm on a television show, and I hear something that I've heard for years, namely, men don't care. Men don't have feelings. I know it's a lie. And it's changing. It's changing when individuals like Paul Fleiss, who's not only speaking professionally tonight, but is speaking personally, because you notice Paul started by saying, I was circumcised. And Paul also told you he was not satisfied with that decision that was made for him. In Paul's case, for religious reasons. This is becoming more common. We will not let that lie resonate anymore. We're talking about our bodies. We're talking about $250 million a year in this country in routine, non-medically indicated infant circumcisions. We're talking about our sexual health, which is every bit as important as any other aspect of our health. And finally, we're talking about the fact that the United States, which prides itself on being the most technologically advanced country in the world, in leading the world in advanced medicine, is now the only industrialized country that performs this practice on a routine basis to the majority of its infants. I put to you tonight something that I ask you to ponder while we're here speaking and afterwards. We are either incredible geniuses in this country, and we are so advanced when it comes to this practice that the rest of the world is just insane for not following us. Or literally, we're insane. I love this country, but I don't mind admitting when we as a society, when we as a culture make mistakes. That's the strength of this country. That's the strength of forums like this. We are willing to come together and we are willing to examine our issues. And we're willing to change, and our history shows it. This country's had more than a few egregious episodes, and we've gotten beyond them. And we're going to get beyond mutilating our children. Up until 50 years ago, they were circumcising females as well. And I'll bet you, again, outside of tonight's video, most people in the room didn't know that. And it was the doctors doing it. It's a testament that now most of us can be ignorant of that. We've risen above that, we've gotten beyond it. And we will do so with our male children, because they are human beings too. Males are not born with birth defects. Everything about biology tells us that. we do not replicate a birth defect for everyone in the population. That's an absolute contradiction. And to the men tonight, I say, I was circumcised at birth. I knew until the age of 35 no other penis than a circumcised penis. And since most of the men in this society, most of the males, whether when I was a boy or an adult, were circumcised, I assumed there was nothing different about my body. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending upon how you see it, I became knowledgeable as an adult in medicine and biology and sexuality. And I found out most of the world's males, 85%, are natural. They don't have their genitals altered, and they're healthy. And I found out what their genitals look like. And I found out how they worked. For the record, I'm heterosexual. So it meant being very honest with some men who I knew were not circumcised and asking them candidly and honestly about their sex lives. I found out that what I grew up with, what I did not know different from, is the abnormality, is the deviation. And lo and behold, when I began to personally undertake physical restoration of my body, or you might call it circumcision reversal, I was amazed. Because frankly, I only thought my penis would end up looking different. I thought by the time the process was done, I would have a penis that looked natural. But 4 months into the process, an amazing thing happened. The tip of my penis began to change color. The texture of the skin began to change. And most importantly, I began to experience levels of sensation, sexual, erotogenic sensation I had never experienced in my life. And I had had a wonderful sex life up to that point. From having studied sexuality in college, I knew for a fact that actually I had a better than average sex life in terms of self-satisfaction. But I was not prepared for what I began to feel. So I've known both sides of it. My natural body was changed before I became an adult, before I became sexually active. I knew no other way. As an adult, I began the process of reversal, and I began to feel things I'd never felt before. To anyone who tells you it makes no difference, I offer my own story. And if it weren't for the birth of our newborn daughter, my partner would be here tonight. And she would tell you that it's changed her sex life. Quite simply put, she loves it. She always thought that circumcision didn't make sense. Now, like the passionate woman that she is, like the mother she always was at heart, like the mother she very much is now, she weeps for the children. For the children who look to the doctors for care, for the children who look to their parents for love, and in the first days of life find pain. I'll conclude with this. Over the last 2 years, I've discussed this at length with my father. My father who had a natural penis. My father who had 4 sons. My father who allowed his 4 sons to be circumcised in the rush after World War II to perfect the human body, which this country went through. We were going to fix everybody with a drug or a knife one way or another. I've discussed this with him at length, shared my feelings, shared my experiences, shared my work in this international movement. All I asked of him was that he listen, and he has. And I'm eternally grateful for that. The last time I saw my father, just a couple of months back, he said, I now realize I made a mistake. It wasn't done with malice. I thought I was doing the best for you. But I realized I didn't think clearly enough about the decision because I had lived a healthy life as a natural, intact male, yet I allowed them to do this to you. I did not take extra time to ask questions on your behalf. I accepted what they told me. To you, I apologize. And I'm very proud of you because I think what you've done is courageous. I can't imagine doing it myself. And I'm so happy you took the time to share this with me so that what I started that was not in your interests, you could finish and be so much the better off for it. I love my father, and he loved me. We can rise above the mutilation. We do not have to attack each other. We do not have to hate our parents. We do not have to condemn religions. But we do need to talk about this subject. We do need to share our feelings. And most importantly, no human being on the face of the earth deserves to have any part of their genitals removed unless it's a medical necessity at the time it occurs. Any adult who wants to alter their body once they're of age, I support that right. Prior to that, we embrace, and above all, we accept our children. There is no reason to be ashamed of our genitals, male or female. I'll close my comments with that, except to say I want to thank everyone for showing up tonight. I've heard a lot about the Granada Forum prior to this occasion. I've never had the opportunity to participate on any level, and quite frankly, I'm very impressed with what I see here tonight. And I think, and I'm sure Paul will join me, that you're an exceptional group for allowing us to bring this issue to your attention. So thank you very much, and we'll open the floor to questions. I'll add one thing, by the way, and I'm sure Paul will agree with me on this as well. Quite frankly, I doubt that there's a question that anyone could ask here that either I haven't heard or Paul hasn't heard, no matter how personal, no matter how intimate, no matter how direct. If you want to be straight, we'll be straight with you. I'll field any question you have, and I know Paul feels the same way, so don't be afraid to dive in.
Okay, back here. Questions? All right. Yes, sir. My question is this. Why, my question is this, why or who makes the decisions to allow this to happen? Why, I should say, why is this being done? It's beyond my reasoning here. That's why I'm so astonished. I'm studying right now. Most things don't shock me. This did. But why, in the name of God, is this being done? That's what I want to know. Why is this being done? What is the purpose? Who's brainwashing? Could you please answer that for me? I'd like to know.
I think it's a pretty good question, but of course there's a lot of parents, when they have a newborn male, they think it's just done automatically, and they think they have no choice in the matter. There are parents that just aren't informed. They think it's done to everyone, and it's something that's automatic, and there's a lot of physicians, doctors that believe in it, and they say to the mother and the father, they say, of course you're going to circumcise your boy. And if the mother says no, they'll say, they'll give an argument. There's a lot of doctors that, there are people that believe it should be done. They believe that they'll give you arguments like cleanliness. They'll say, oh, what do you need how can you keep that part of your body clean? But the truth of the matter is you just leave it alone. They leave it alone. It's not supposed to retract. If there is a problem that arises with the foreskin, it's very easily corrected without cutting it off. The foreskin of the newborn is attached to the glands. Secretions that form underneath it are normal. They're supposed to be there. They're not dirty. I think it's really difficult to say why the movement is as strong as it is without attacking somebody. I don't think so. I don't think that the religious thing is a very small part of the argument, because it goes way beyond religious people. And of course, the religious argument is rather kind of silly when you think that man is supposedly made in God's image, that you're not supposed to mutilate your body, you're not supposed to tattoo your body, you're not supposed to pierce your ears, you're not supposed to pierce any part of your body. That's all part of the old books too.
I'd like to say one thing briefly in response to your question. If you try to logically understand why this practice continues in this country at this time with all the knowledge available now, you will not be able to figure it out, I promise you. This movement has some wonderful minds who've been working on this problem since the early 1970s. And the movement has done nothing but grow, and even better minds have come aboard. The reason why you cannot figure out logically why this practice continues is for the reason that psychologists and therapists well recognize with a variety of other conditions. Those who are abused, most, not all, but most of those who are abused in any way, emotionally, physically, psychologically, sexually, will abuse others when they have children. I have counseled many parents on this, and there is a tremendous innate sunken fear about giving up this practice, because in order to give up this practice, you have to accept that we've made a mistake to this point. In order to say we've made a mistake to this point, you have to recognize that possibly you were mutilated, your father was mutilated, your brother was mutilated, your lover or husband was mutilated, your best friend was mutilated. It is very understandable psychologically why a whole society that has invested so much in this would not want to turn around and, as part of giving it up, look in the mirror and say, we are mutilated. The best way not to be mutilated is to keep mutilating and pretend that mutilation is normal. Then it's not mutilation.
Okay. I don't believe it's mutilation. Anyone who is circumcised, I say, thank your lucky stars. Have you talked to many men that have not been circumcised and about their sexual experiences? It's very painful. It's hard to clean themselves because of that skin. Very hard. It's very painful. Many people that you call intact have pain in their life as adults throughout their whole life because of it.
Let me ask you this. Who do you think has more, let me ask the question in response.
Sure.
Who has more genital health issues? Cancer, infections, urinary tract infections, yeast infections, males or females?
Women.
Okay. What part of the female anatomy do we remove of our children in order to save them the discomfort?
None.
Why would we deny our beautiful female children the benefits of genital alteration in order to save them? Why are
Well,
you discriminating against female children?
This is brainwashing. Yeah, I have a friend.
Excuse me, deal with the facts.
I wish he could have been here tonight because he would tell you that he wished he could have a circumcision.
He can
if
have it
weren't
done.
So painful.
Well,
He
he can have
goes
it done
through
if he
pain
wants it.
every day of his life
That-
because he is not circumcised.
Well, it's very interesting that the United States is the only place where 60 or 70% of the males are circumcised at birth. The rest of the world, when you speak to doctors from Scandinavia or Germany or Japan or England, they say, why? Why do Americans do this procedure? They have sex. They enjoy sex.
Well, what
They
do you
don't
say to
have
my
pain.
friend who's in pain every day of his life.
He can have it corrected.
Let me hug this one here. Let me hug this woman a minute. Just hug her, explain something.
Let her finish.
Okay,
We're
I
doing
want to
quick.
hug her because there's something she's
Tony, go ahead.
misunderstanding.
I am not
ahead.
misunderstanding anything.
Tony, I'll wait till she's finished.
I think all of you
I want to be
are.
polite.
No, I think I said all I have to say. That's it.
You raise a good point. I'd like to share one other thing. If every body part that presented a problem was uniformly removed from the rest of us at birth, what would we look like at 18? If that's
As I was looking down this list, I realized, yes, there's a motive. Go ahead. In the bottom,
I do not know a body part that does not experience medical problems.
they touched upon.
The fact of the matter is, we all have different health issues at different times. And I refuse to join the countries that advocate female genital mutilation for the very same reasons you were just advocating male circumcision in this country. Because when you go to them, they cite the health statistics that I was just citing, that females have far more genital problems as measured by cancers, as measured by infections, as measured by defects. And the fact of the matter is, if I use your criteria, you brought the criteria to the table. If I use your criteria, it would be the females that would be leading the way into the clinics every day and would be altering them. And I am here to tell you, I will not accept that. I will not, for health reasons. Women by every standard, whether in the United States or by the World Health Organization, have more genital cancers, have more genital infections in a lifetime than males do by factors of 3, 4, 5, and 10. So if your criteria is legitimate, the first thing we would do tomorrow is start altering females. And I'm here to tell you, as the father of a newborn daughter, I'm not going to allow that to be done to her. I refuse to accept your rationale.
I feel sorry for your friend or whoever it was who said that. It's, okay, I would tell you that if he's having pain, it's very easily fixed, and without cutting off his foreskin. And if he's having a problem, you can tell him to call me. I'll tell him how to fix it. I won't charge him. You know what? If you ask men that are circumcised, some of their penises are bent, some of them are scarred. Some of them they don't have sin.
Okay,
Oh,
let's
the
get on
exaggeration.
with the questions,
Yes.
please.
Okay.
I would like to thank both of these gentlemen for coming here tonight. I think the topic is one that takes courage to speak openly about. I'm a naturopathic physician, and I say that in preamble so that you understand where I'm coming from when I speak about this issue. I was born in a Jewish family, but I was brought up by Christians, and I would question what I was trained by my parents, and yet my Christian values taught me that what I was being trained to believe was wrong. I see this as mutilation and barbarism tantamount to what is being done to infants in primitive societies like Papua New Guinea and Africa, where not only do they mutilate their genitals, but also other parts of their body by making incisions on their face and arms. I have seen pictures of infants scarred for life Is this tantamount to that kind of barbarism? I see this because it is truly a barbaric act. If people don't have the opportunity to make a decision for themselves, then why don't we retrace history and understand that not so long ago, infants were being routinely inoculated for polio and smallpox. And many have died later years for that very reason. As a naturopathic physician, not only do I speak against any type of surgery that is done unnecessarily, we're talking about such things as even routine circumcision as compared to, for instance, let's take, for instance, in obstetrics, where 65% of American women are now facing, at first delivery, cesarean as an option. This is pushed upon them by intimidation and fear. And under the act of fear, nobody can make an intelligent decision. I think the parents don't have the option of making a decision because they are scared by the medical establishment's greed and manipulation into making a decision hastily, regretting later on, but never voicing their regret. Thank you.
I'd like to applaud your courage for talking about your own personal situation. That is a perfect example of what is happening more and more all the time in this country. Men, one at a time, saying, I have a right to talk about my own body and my own life and what was done to me. Thank you very much.
I'd have a more panoramic view of why this happens to children. It's like a normal tonsillectomy. It's like circumcision. It's like a lot of other procedures that are done when a child is born. Not enough of the parents actually ask questions as to what the procedures are going to be when they have the child or before they have the child. That leads them directly into this. You want to comment? Or anything to add?
Well, I think that the more informed parents are, then the better able they are to make decisions. And there's a lot of decisions that parents should make when they have a baby. Of course, the more informed you are, the more educated you are, the more you enjoy things too. So I think education is very important.
I want to just state for the record that my husband was not circumcised. My 3 sons were not circumcised. They range in age from 22 to 32, and none of them have had 1 day's worth of a problem. They were uncircumcised. Okay.
Of course, and of course, the great majority of men, if they leave it alone, some boys, some are mistakenly have, sometimes it's a doctor, sometimes it's a nurse, sometimes it's a parent, sometimes it's a babysitter, will forcibly retract the foreskin, and sometimes they rip it apart, and it forms a scar, and then sometimes then they'll have a problem. Mm-hmm. But the vast majority of people the world over will not have a problem.
I had a phone call last night about 9:30 from a friend in Long Beach, and he asked what the program was going to be tonight, and I told him. Then he asked me if I had had my son circumcised, and I said no. And then he said I was circumcised, and I had repeated infections, one after the other. My parents knew what caused it, but the doctor would never admit guilt on the subject.
Of course, that's true, and there's many boys will have circumcision, and they'll have to have it redone. I just saw one a few months ago. The doctor used an anesthetic, and it had left such a mutilated penis. The penis, instead of being straight, had a 90-degree angle curve to it. So the urologist had to go in and redo it, restructure his penis. It was perfectly straight before they did anything to it.
Now, statistically, they say 85% of the rest of the world does not circumcise their baby boys. And I've been reading lately on statistics on this. Maybe you can tell me whether it's true or not. Back around 1980, there were 90% of males were circumcised in the United States. Now, after about 20 years, is around a 30% drop. 60% now are not are circumcised. Is that right? About 60%?
Well, it's hard to get really good, accurate data, and it surely varies with different parts of the country. In the southeast part of the United States, most of the boys are still being circumcised. In California, we do about the best of any part in the rest of the world in leading people. We have more educated parents, I believe. And it depends on what part of the area of the country you're in. It used to be that circumcision was sort of a mark of social class. If you were born on the west side of Los Angeles, you were circumcised. If you were born at the county hospital, you were left intact because the county wouldn't pay it. And so then it became, as you grew up and you went to gym class, people knew whether you were poor or whether you had some amount of affluence just by the way you looked in the shower room.
I think that must be true. I did a little reading on female circumcision in the Sudan and Egypt. And in Egypt, increasingly, the more educated the people, the less apt they are to do that. And they so stated in the article. Thank you, Dr. Fleiss.
Hi, good evening. My name's Cynthia. I've been an LVN for 27 years, and I'll make it as brief as I can. To help answer your question, sir, and this nice young lady over here, I've worked maternity since 1974. When I was in nursing school, the mothers at Kaiser Permanente in Panorama City were asked in heavy labor, well, if you have a boy, do you want a circ or not? If the mom said yes, she signed the circ consent. Baby was born, mom's being cleaned up, and the baby was circed in the delivery room. Mothers signed the consent. I worked UCLA for 4 years, and when I would work postpartum, mother-baby couplet care, we would ask the moms who had boys, would you like a circ or not? Generally it was yes. Here's this surgical consent, please sign it. That gave the doctor the permission to do the circumcision. I left UCLA and then worked at Cedars for about 7 years. Again, I would go around with my little clipboard, unwittingly of course, nurse told that I had to do this as part of my job, to ask the moms who had male boys, would you like your son circumcised or not? Again, the mom who wanted them done would sign the consent form. And then myself and the other nurses would bring the babies in one at a time, circumstrate them, put the little Velcro on their elbows and knees, and then they'd be circumcised by the doctor. We'd put in the type of gloves they wanted or the instruments each doctor preferred. And also, afterwards, we'd clean them up and I would toss the foreskin into the trash. It's amazing as a nurse, a woman, and a lover. To this day, I don't understand how some men sometimes don't even know if they're circumcised or not. I have actually run into men who said, oh, I don't know if I'm cut or not. It's amazing that these few little centimeters of skin has so much misunderstanding and ignorance. Also, another thing that has amazed me, I have to take continuing education every 2 years, as Dr. Fleiss, you do too. I took a class at Valley Presbyterian in 1983, which that really opened my eyes up the most. But remember, before that, I had seen a lot of little babies with their little foreskins intact and then, of course, cut off. To quote Dr. Larry Menzer, a pediatrician in Van Nuys, he said that circumcision is the most overdone and misunderstood surgery in America. And boy, that really hit home for me. And I just real quick want to tell you, as a mother-baby couplet nurse in the home, I have been present at many, many Brit Milahs. The most, how can I put this, outrageous and insane ceremonies were people from Iran or Israel, where they had catered food, valet parking, and all this money spent, and sheeps on spits going around and around, and saying in the background, I'm just trying to give you the history of circumcision. I'm just trying to tell you that if it isn't broken, don't fix it. And may the foreskin be with you. Thank you.
Well, gee, I guess I'm the last one, so I can take the rest of the night and to say a few things that I think. First of all, I want to thank you gentlemen for being here. and I invite you to return here because generally we have a much larger crowd. If you would have been here a few weeks ago when former Congressman Hansen was here, this place was packed and you couldn't even get a seat. And I'm in the habit myself of every Wednesday calling the Granada Forum's 818 number to listen to the pre-recorded message, which tells pretty much a preview of what's going to be happening. Today, when I called the number and it gave the briefing about what was going to be presented tonight, I had doubts about coming here. And I thought, well, that has nothing to do with my interest in finding out what the government's trying to put on me or over me. And because basically, being a patriot, I'm interested in learning what the government's hiding. And if you gentlemen will make it to some of our other meetings, you'll find that a lot of the people here are here for one reason, and that is to acquire knowledge. They want to know what the government knows that's being kept from the public, or that the controlled media is not disseminating to the public. And the Granada Forum is excellent in providing that type of information. I would like to say that I am very happy that I came here tonight. I'm circumcised, and I can tell you I can relate to the information that's in that video as far as you get older, losing sensation. That is absolutely true in my case. And if it's in my case, I'm sure there's thousands of other males who are experiencing the same thing. Right away, I think that you guys should be on major talk shows, Oprah Winfrey, and why don't they put this kind of information on television? Have you been on any talk shows of that type?
Many people in our movement have, Paul has, I have. I would like to just say in response to that, the reason why you don't see the subject more often is probably the same reason that you didn't get your usual good turnout tonight. This is a truly difficult, sometimes embarrassing, sometimes awkward, often horrific subject. And quite frankly, most people find that emotionally they just can't come to the table, or they're not ready to yet. And so we're used to talking to smaller than average audiences. But I can tell you, and I'm sure Paul will echo this as well, in 20 years, we've gone from being the occasional lone voice in the wilderness to fairly consistently every year, year in, year out, representatives of our movement are increasingly getting national coverage. Times are changing. People want to know the truth.
Well, one of the things that...
I've been on 60 Minutes in 2020. I've been on television many times. They used to be able to find people to debate me. But the last time I was asked they called me and asked me if I would be on, I don't know if it was KFI, it was one talk station, and I said yes, I would be happy to talk about, be on there. And then he calls me back and he says, we've tried all week to find a doctor to present the other side and debate with you, and we couldn't find anybody. And I think there's quite a few doctors that do the procedure, and they're a lot like I was. They continue to do the procedure, and they don't believe in it. I don't believe they're doing it because parents want it done, and parents then they get this idea that it's necessary, that they get these false ideas from people that spread words that it's painful to have a foreskin, that it's abnormal to have a foreskin, that something bad will happen to you if you have a foreskin, and this word gets passed around, and then the parents want it. They go into the doctor's office, the doctor says, sure, I'll do it. And so it's done. But I'd say that most of the doctors that are doing them don't believe in them.
Well, I'll wrap it up here because we got some other people that need to ask questions. But I do want to say that if you attend the Granada Forum, a lot of us here are always looking for the government angle on something like this. And so one of my first thoughts was a newborn baby, that entity which is inside of its mother, is a fully conscious being. And he experiences really what is death, because he's being born into one world. He's coming from one world and being born into an entirely alien environment. And the trauma from that alone is there. I don't believe there's probably been a lot of research. I don't know about that end of it, but I can say this: hold that thought, because I want to tell you something. That trauma being, and then the new trauma that comes along, I believe, and I'm speculating on this, and I'm interested in researching this further, but I believe that when you circumcise a baby, that additional trauma would instill a subconscious fear in a child, so that it would make him passive, so that as he matures and becomes older, he will have a fear of discovering new worlds, of venturing out, because he was born from an old world into this world and had that pain. The second thing is, our government, the CIA, uses pain and trauma to mind wash and brainwash people, and that's what mind control is all about. You need to be here when Kathy O'Brien, get to Kathy O'Brien's video. Trauma is a device that's being used by the Soviets previously and by our own government, affecting trauma on children and young children in order to, and there's plenty of psychological information about how trauma, as in childhood, such as children being in an abusive home, that affects them for the rest of their life. Their math aptitude goes down, and this just is something that needs to be more research on this. Maybe there is, and now I will know to go out and look for that.
There's a lot, and a lot of what you say is absolutely true. You can measure the pain of circumcision. You can measure it biochemically, neurologically in the little baby, and then you can measure that baby after he has that initial pain of circumcision. When he's subjected to future pain, he feels it a lot more. It's a lot more painful. And that has been, that's very well documented, that happens. So we're doing a lot to newborn babies that we don't really understand. And who knows? All the things you say might be true.
Before you ask your question, just FYI to the last gentleman, in the early 1960s, as part of its mind alteration experiments, the CIA arranged to have infants circumcised in a special test program to see how it affected them. And that was part of the program where they destroyed all the records in 1971 before they were brought before a congressional committee. So we don't know what the outcome was, but the CIA actually thought it would be worth having that experiment done to see the effect on children.
Speaking from my own experience, I was not part of that test. And I've never had any discomfort ever. Nothing more than a shower wouldn't take care of it, keep any smell away from anything. I guess under my arms, that's my big problem. People tell me I need to wear deodorant, but nobody's ever told me that I need to go wash myself. So anyway, as far as sexuality, I can tell you that it's no pain or discomfort for me. And I think we ought to have a show of hands for all the people who have not had these problems that we're being relayed to us by a person of the other sex.
I have a question to ask you about restoration. I'd like to know how it's done, if it's painful, if it's expensive, and whatever you can tell me.
A basic introduction to foreskin restoration. There are two methods, two basic approaches. You either go the surgical route, which would involve skin graft, or you go the non-surgical route, which would involve skin expansion at the site. Today and through most of the 90s, the movement of men restoring, which is growing all the time, is about 90 to 95% skin expansion. Very few men undergo the surgical approach. And quite simply, the comparison between the two is this. If you go the surgical route, it's extremely expensive. We're talking about, depending upon the procedure, $5,000, $7,000, $10,000, $15,000. It can involve multiple surgeries, 1, 2, 3 surgeries over a period of anywhere between 6 months and a year and a half. That definitely involves pain during recovery. And as far as the outcome, most people agree that the surgical rebuilds, if you will, have the least natural looking appearance. By contrast, the very popular non-surgical approach involves very little money. Typically, the entire process will cost less than $750 total, round trip, all costs. That $750 will be spent over a period of time between a year and 4 or 5 years, depending upon the individual and their program. And it involves absolutely no pain.
Okay.
Zero pain. When you go the non-surgical route and you're expanding the skin at the site to form a new foreskin, it's done gradually, and that's the downside for most men. They don't like the idea of taking a year to 2 years or 3 years to do it, but when you do it gradually, you experience no pain, and gradually you form a new foreskin.
Is this an unusual new kind of procedure, and are there doctors that are experienced in doing this?
You're talking about the non-surgical?
Yes.
Okay, the non-surgical, that's one of the reasons why we're a truly budding movement. And there's a book back there on the table called The Joy of Uncircumcising. And basically, it's a self-help book. You can do it yourself. You don't need a doctor. And it's frankly one of the reasons why a lot of doctors, say in urology, are pissed off at us. They don't get a dime.
That's great. Thank
They
you
don't
very
get
much.
let me finish.
Okay.
They don't get a dime. If you don't want to go to a doctor, you don't have to. If you, as a male, you know you're not a male, but if you, as a male, get that book, and especially if you connect with a local norm chapter, and if you're comfortable doing it, there's ample instructions for how you can put the skin on your penis under careful traction. You can still lead the rest of your life. You can engage in sports. You can work. Other people won't know about it. And over a period of time, you will gradually not only form a new foreskin, but most importantly, as the skin forms and the inner part of the penis is protected, it begins to heal. All those years of callousing, all those years of abrasion, all those years of dryness gradually begin to shed away, and a whole new sexual sensation comes forward. So for the most part, you don't do it with doctors, and that's one of the reasons why most doctors are like, well, why would I get involved? I can't make any money.
Thank you very much.
One last thing to your question, for the record. I started my restoration non-surgically at the age of 35, and 38 months later, as one person put it to me, my God, you look like you're from Europe. That was my own journey. With advances in the procedure today, we have men who are completing the process in 18 months and even 24 months. So it keeps going down and down and down.
Good evening. Thanks for coming here tonight. I would like to agree with you and disagree with you that female genital mutilation is exactly that, and it was that is of barbaric origins to reduce female pleasure, so that with the presumption that women might in adultery bear the children of another man than their husband. So this was done in cultures to keep that down, so that a wife would only bear the children of the husband, which apparently has led to the rise in sodomy, and that is why in Africa there's such a great spreading of AIDS. However, the origin, as I understand, of male circumcision is recorded in the Bible, the oldest and most trustworthy book in the world, in Genesis, where God said to Abraham that you will circumcise the skin of your foreskin, and that will be a mark that you are my people in the world. And God, to my mind, provided males with something we can live without to state our following of God. That's the origin, as I understand it, of that. And my question is twofold. Do you realize that is the recorded genesis, if you will, of male circumcision? And what's your opinion on my belief that, with that in mind, this movement is against God's stated wishes, and therefore against the Jewish religion and the Christian religion, which is the fulfillment of that?
Well, to correct the very last statement you made, you would need to also include Islam because they practice it as well. So we would be anti-Semitic, we would be anti-Islamic, and we would be anti-Christian, to correct your last statement in all fairness. None of which we are. First, a statement of fact, and you can easily double check this from many sources. The oldest records of circumcision, whether male or female, predate the Bible by thousands of years. Thousands. All right, so number one, as practiced by the Jews, that is a follow-on. Frankly, anthropologists believe that genital mutilation in different forms predates history, that we will never know how it started. And we do know that ancient peoples, from what we see, mutilated themselves in a variety of ways. Because keep in mind, ancient peoples didn't know why there was rain. Ancient peoples didn't know why there was thunder. Everything was magical, and everything, therefore, was fearful. They did a variety of things to themselves that were born of ignorance, and therefore were unhealthy. And these things came down, and even some of our most enlightened societies incorporated these things. And we just keep improving as history goes on. So anyway, there's the origins. As far as FGM, and I'll let Paul jump in as well, as far as FGM is concerned, every reason we practice male circumcision in this country, I could put you on an airplane tomorrow at LAX, I could fly you halfway around the world to East Africa, I could take you into villages, and you would hear loving, caring parents of daughters there give you the exact same reasons for circumcising their girls as you hear here regarding males. And I could even introduce you to doctors in East Africa who would defend it. What our movement says is simple. We will not discriminate. This is what our movement says. We will not discriminate in protecting the rights of any human being, regardless of their color, regardless of their ethnicity, regardless of their nationality, regardless of their gender, regardless of their sexual orientation, when it comes to their rights as a human being to grow up without having people treat them like a barnyard animal, hacking off pieces of their body because of adult beliefs. As far as the biblical reference is concerned, I will say this. You cannot call something you steal a sacrifice. If you want to make a sacrifice, you make it yourself with something you have when you're of the appropriate age, and it's something you value. You do not steal someone else's property and then call it a sacrifice. You protect and accept your children, and when they get to 18, if they want to hack off part of their body in front of the village or the tribe or the congregation or whatever it is, now that's a sacrifice. At 18, letting someone cut off a part of your body without anesthetic is a genuine sacrifice. Before that, it's a theft.
Excuse me, just before Dr. Fleiss. Excuse me, I want to question his reference for a second. And I referred to it not as a sacrifice. It's not it at all. It's simply a marking of who is God's in the world. No sacrifice was ever mentioned. And when you said that there were older records, I'd like to know what those were. In that the Bible records the earliest. God told us the truth at the time when Moses transcribed the earliest records. Those are referring to clay tablets going all the way back. And I'd like to know what records you refer to that claim that circumcision was older and in older records.
Well, first of all, remember Abraham was 99 years old when he got that message from God.
That's correct.
So maybe we should circumcise men when they're 99 years old. Because it ends up being more than just a mark. And indeed, through the ages, circumcision has changed a great deal as a procedure. The original Moyles would not only cut the foreskin, they would suck the blood with their mouths. And that procedure is described in the old books. And so there's a lot of things described in old books that we don't follow exactly. And remember, it also says in those same old books that man is made in God's image. that you're not supposed to mutilate your body. There's a lot of health laws that are stated in the Bible, and they all have the same they have the same importance. You know, if a woman has pierced ears, she can't be buried in an Orthodox Jewish cemetery. There's a lot of very strict laws that we break.
Doctor, one quick question. This 18-month do-it-yourself program, do you have to become a celibate during that period of time?
No,
I think I can answer that.
That was about restoration, correct? Okay. No, because, and actually the gentleman with the mic can also chip in on this after I'm done. You don't become celibate, but because of some of the devices that you may attach, quite frankly, the speed with which one might spontaneously get into sexual activity with a partner is affected, quite honestly. But these devices can be removed. Again, the spontaneity is sometimes affected. Luckily, and this is increasing all the time too, I had a partner who was incredibly supportive. And like a lot of things in this busy age, you can adapt your sex life to a schedule. And we did, and we found it was not a problem.
Yeah, my name is Mark. I'm 44 years old, and I started restoring 2 years ago. All I can say is thank God for the internet. I had always been dissatisfied being circumcised, but there was nobody to talk to about it. Everyone I knew was circumcised. And on subsequent trips to Europe, where the sauna is a way of life, I ended up hiding my genitals. I was so embarrassed that I had been cut, and everybody else was natural. And then 2 years ago, when I saw on the internet that restoration was possible, I sent away for the kit from Evans in Arizona, started the whole process myself. I did consult a couple doctors who knew nothing about it. And through trial and error, I got the tapes, which I'm restoring at the moment I'm talking. I'm restoring right now. I mean, every waking moment that I can, I am restoring. And after 2 years, all I can say is that I had my first orgasm at 12 years old. All the others were redundant. And I had my second one about a year ago, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, the pleasure, the restoration is incredible, not only for appearance, but the sensation from what I had missed. It was like going from black and white television back to color. And it does work. And after 2 years, I would estimate maybe I have 1 more year to go and I'll be finished. And that's without any surgery at all. And I'm so glad I did.
That's the end of the questions, doctors, and thank you.
I'd like to at this time thank Dr. Fleiss and, oh, I'm sorry, we have one more question here. Go ahead.
You know, I mentioned I should mention this because we had a gentleman here earlier who was talking about the early Hebrew tradition of circumcision and such. I want to say that if you look in the New Testament of the Holy Bible, there was a big debate in the early church. A big dispute arose over circumcision versus non-circumcision, and it was really a traumatic thing for the early church. And they took sides, and there were literally a great dissendency about this issue. But Paul, what he ended up telling these people, this is in Acts and Colossians 2 and 2:11. Basically, what he told them was that the circumcision of the flesh is symbolic of the circumcision of the heart. And it symbolizes circumcision that the Christian is to have in the purification process and coming to God and purifying his heart so that he can receive the Word of God. And the circumcision was a symbolic, was to symbolize that. But basically said it doesn't matter if you're circumcised or not circumcised, but it's the love of God that matters and that prevails above all. And that should be a personal choice.
That's a very fitting note to end on. I want to personally thank Dr. Paul Fleiss, Stephen Michaud, and Tony Shale for bringing this program to us. Ralph has a little something he wants to share with you.
Yeah, we got 6 tapes at our cost of what we showed here this evening. They're back. You got 5 left, 4 left. Okay, and they're $15 for anybody that would like that tape. It's right in the back there.
I want to also mention that there was a second video we had hoped to show this evening, but we're running low on time. So what we're going to do is we're going to run that video onto this video and have it available for sale next week. So we will also have the second video, but we will not be showing it tonight. But if you buy the video from Dennis next week, that portion at 10, 15, I think a 20-minute segment will be on there dealing with the subject of female circumcision. It is the testimony of this beautiful black African model. She was circumcised, and the ritual that is very routine at this time in mostly northern Africa. She addresses that issue. It's another conscious raising session, and she gives some very interesting and really heart-rending documentation and testimony. I think you really will appreciate it. So if you have an opportunity to, you might want to pick that video up next week. Thank you very much for coming.